Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the first AOBTA Lunch and Learn webinar. We hope that we will be having many more, and we're really looking forward to your response since this is our first time trying this. I'm Deborah Valentine-Smith. I'm the new AOBTA president. I want to do a few housekeeping things with you before we start in terms of how to use the program. And please give us feedback as we go along. You are actually in listen-only mode, so we can't see or hear you. But you can submit questions to the presenter using the question and answer function on the bottom of your screen, or communicate using the staff function. Matthew Swigert, who's our communications director, is standing by to field your questions and your chats. And we will generally answer your questions at the end of the presentation. This webinar is also going to be recorded, and the recording will be made available to you on the event listing of this webinar on the AOBTA website calendar. So, all that said, I'd like to start with asking who's here. We want to just do a quick poll to see what form you practice. So you're going to see a poll appearing on the screen, and if you could click, oops, that's the end poll. If you could click on the form when we get that one up. As I said, we're working on this. This is our first time through. You'll have a chance to answer the evaluation when we get to the end. There we go. So if you just take a second to use your mouse and click on which form you do, so we get kind of an idea of who's here. So Kamala also knows who she's talking to. And we'll give you a couple of seconds more to do that. Okay, great, thank you. And I want to go on and introduce. Well, we have, here's our answer. We have 33% acupressure, 22% Jin Shin Do, 11% Amma, 11% Tuina, and 67% Shiatsu.
Hey, right. Shiatsu.
Now you know. Okay. So I'd like to introduce Kamala Quale, who I've known for probably 40 years, I think. And I'm so excited that she's doing this webinar. She's really the person to be doing this kind of presentation for us. Kamala has a private practice in Eugene, Oregon, where she sees clients for body-mind acupressure and acupuncture. And body-mind spirit integration is the highlight and specialty of her work, and she's known as an expert in that field. Kamala loves to share her integration of classical Chinese medicine and the 5 elements, combined with mindfulness and body-centered focusing skills. She's taught her methods of Asian bodywork and acupuncture to Asian bodywork and acupuncture professionals for more than 25 years. Kamala is also an avid Qigong practitioner and teacher and supports a thriving community of practitioners in Eugene. She uses her knowledge and experience from the clinic in her classes to create a center of movement and healing that inspires body, mind, spirit wholeness. Kamala's certifications include licensed acupuncturist, certified AOBTA instructor, authorized teacher of Jin Shin Do body mind acupressure, and certified therapist of Hakomi mindfulness-centered somatic psychotherapy. So welcome, Kamala. I'm so excited that you're here.
Thank you, Deborah. Thanks a lot. It's really a treat to work with you. And as Deborah said, we've known each other, almost 40 years, I bet, through the Jin Shin Do Foundation. So this is really exciting. And I'm also, oops, if I can keep my microphone in here. I'm also really honored to be the first presenter in this Lunch and Learn series. And, hold on a sec, sorry about that. Technical difficulties. I'm also really honored to be the first presenter in this Lunch and Learn series. And Wayne, I want to thank you for all the energy that you put in to make this happen. And I want to welcome everyone. I want to welcome everybody who's here today and everybody who's going to join us in the future. It gives me an opportunity to share what I'm passionate about with you, and I'm really hoping that it helps you with your own practice and with your clients. And so let's begin. I'm going to tell you about body-mind skills that can help you assist clients to discover themselves in the moment, and how you can help them find the wisdom in patterns of tension and the resource in patterns of expansion. I want to start with telling you a little bit about my history and my teachers so you know where I'm coming from. I could sum it up by saying that I fell in love with classical Chinese medicine, the power of the points, the metaphors, the symbolism, the cosmology, Taoist philosophy. And I also fell in love with healing through self-discovery and inner cultivation, and all that is intertwined for me. And it began, my studies with Chinese medicine began in the early 80s when I started studying Jin Shin Do, body-mind acupressure, which is the work of Iona Marsla Teagarden. And Iona's work was very instrumental for me. I learned about Chinese medicine. I learned about body-mind integration. I learned about the 5 elements. And I also learned a ton from my fellow senior Jin Shin Do teachers like Deborah and others. And together we authored chapters in Iona's book, A Complete Guide to Acupressure. So mine was called Expanding Body-Mind Awareness. As many of you may know, Jin Shin Do, one of the hallmarks of it is that you release body tension and body armoring and explore it in the process. So I started doing Jin Shin Do with clients, and in fact, I realized that yes, they start talking about their life, they have emotional release, and I thought, you know, I want to increase my counseling skills. So I looked around a little bit and I settled on the Hakomi method. Hakomi, as Deborah mentioned, it's a mindfulness-centered somatic psychotherapy. It was originated by Ron Kurtz, and both Ron Kurtz and John Eisman, who's a key teacher, were some of my main teachers in the method. Hakomi is a psychotherapy, it's a counseling method, but it uses the mind and the body interface, and it uses mindfulness. And the pace of mindfulness, the use of mindfulness really helped it be a good blend with the slower pace of Jin Shin Do. I was able to take people in deeper in a more satisfying way. And then in the early 90s, I met Heiner Fruhoff, who became my next Chinese medicine mentor. He started the classical Chinese medicine program at the National University of Natural Medicine in Portland, where I went to acupuncture school. And I met Heiner because he was translating for a Chinese Qigong teacher in a class near Eugene. And I went to that class and I thought, you know, I really want to hear more about what this guy has to say. So I went to China with him twice, in 1994 and 2010. And of course, I went to acupuncture training. In 94, we were studying Qi and Qigong, and I was introduced to 2 of my teachers, Master Wang and Master Wu. And in 2010, I went back and we studied with Master Lu a path called Shanren Dao, or Path of the Good Person. So I was with 30 other practitioners. We were in a Buddhist monastery in China, and we were experiencing this method, which is one of the only methods that I've seen, a Chinese method that is working on physical healing, but doing it by directly intervening on the emotional and relational level. So it was unique in that way. It's in that path, they combine the 5 elements with Confucian principles of relationship. And it had an effect on me, and you will see it in my integration of the work. Okay, next slide. There we go. Okay. So I always thought that if I could combine the best of classical Chinese medicine and the power of the points with the best of Hakomi, that it would be great. And so I proceeded to do that, and it has created a map and a method for Asian bodyworkers and acupuncturists that can really help us focus our clients, focus their mind, access their intuitive wisdom, and heal disease, strengthen Shen from the inside out. So I call this integration Heart-Mind Solutions. Heart-Mind being our innermost source of consciousness and spirit, and solutions because accessing heart-mind wisdom is the key to changing the physical, emotional, and spiritual landscape and leads to true healing. So I'm going to show you some of those skills and how I use them with Jane, not her real name, but this is the woman that I wrote about in the case called Mind and Body Journey with Asthma. Okay, I'm going to start out by telling you this term Yangsheng. It means nourished life. And this, when I start a presentation or when I teach a class, I really like to notice what am I inspired by. This is an example of one of those metaphors and philosophies in classical Chinese medicine that I use all the time with clients to help transform, reframe their experience and transform stuck places. In this term, yang here, means more than just food. It's about nourishing and eating food, but it's more implies nurturing, educating, caring for in a whole way. It's found in early Taoist texts for nourishing the heart mind, and it's also in Confucian texts for building character. And the term sheng is the same sheng that we use for the generation cycle of the 5 elements, so it means the process of life coming into being, moving from one phase to the next. And together, this term Yangsheng and nourished life is talking about the nourishment and development, the continual nourishment and development of life from one moment to the next. I feel like that's what we do in our work, and especially in body-mind work, we can really help the person discover themselves and bring out and support inner resources that help their growth and their healing. Okay, so let's start to talk about this case, Body-Mind Journey with Asthma. I want to tell you about the key elements that I felt I was working with in this case, which were metal, water, fire, and wood. Metal, not only because we're working with asthma in the lungs, but also because Jane has very high expectations of herself. And that was implicated in her breathing. Also fire, because as we'll find out, her relationships and her relationship with intimacy are part of her breathing problems. And water, because what the inner resource we found was a quiet strength that flowed like a river in her belly, and I'll be describing more about that in a minute. But the theme for our work together was to teach her to nourish herself. So not only about me nourishing her, but really to teach her to nourish herself by reevaluating her expectations and opening herself to this quiet inner stillness and confidence that she finds in herself and others. So Jane has had asthma since childhood and has been on medication since age 3. This coincided with the time that her mother and father divorced. She has a good relationship with her mom, but not so good with her dad. There's a family history of asthma. Jane also has allergies, especially to dust mites and mold. Facial acne that she struggles with, which there implicates lung and large intestine. Tight diaphragm, neck and shoulders, and frequent frustration. So, the liver is in there, liver qi stagnation. And soreness, especially in the first session, she was very sore at lung 1. And in her pulses, I was really drawn to the liver and lung relationship. The liver was wiry and tight, the lung was deficient. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about the case, and then I'm going to describe after that how we did things and the skill level of it. So I started out with an initial palpation from head to foot, which is commonly done in Jinshin Do. And I wanted to get a sense of the lay of the land and her tension patterns and any of the shu or the mu points that were calling out. And also, very importantly, I want to start the mindfulness process with Jane. And so I invite her to feel along with me, explore her patterns of body tension. And this increases her body awareness and also starts the mindfulness process. And I'm working towards creating a partner relationship with her, which I'm going to explain more about as we go along. I'm also really looking for what draws her attention. What is she curious about? Because what a person is curious about, that's where they're going to want to work. And I use that to help me decide what we're going to do. And that's part of creating that partnership model in the work. And because of the stress and tension she feels in her breathing problems, Jane tenses her diaphragm, she tightens her chest, and she raises her shoulders. Okay, and that's what she was most curious about, and she wanted to explore that pattern. So I got permission to do some body mind work. I said to her, you know, we could use points in your breathing and some inner focusing in order to see if we can discover any of those inner patterns that contribute here. Are you into that? And she said, yes, you know, that's what I want to do. So I decided in this first session that to study, for the study part, I would do a slow and mindful shiatsu type pressure along her diaphragm, and then point-wise address the liver and the lung imbalance with liver 14, lung 1, and lung 9. And the main heart-mind methods that I used was forming this partner relationship, engaging her curiosity, increasing her body awareness, and finding the wisdom in that pattern of tension. Hold on a second. Okay. All right, so this is part of the skill level. And it's a basics that goes along with how you work and how you form your healing relationship. And this is an example of the integration between Hakomi and classical Chinese medicine that I've done. In Hakomi, there are 5 principles that practitioners use to develop their healing relationship and work with their clients. And in the 5 phases, the 5 elements also have principles that guide our work. And they encompass those in Hakomi, and they also give it their own flavor that especially appeals to us as practitioners of Asian bodywork because it's a language that we use. So wood, as we know, is the energy of spring. It's the energy of new beginnings, of clarity and assertiveness and moving towards a goal. So it's very appropriate to be in the wood energy at the beginning of your relationship with a person and at the beginning of a session where you're educating and you're talking to them about options and choice, and you're starting this idea of working in partnership. So, which also is a Hakomi integration. I think that as practitioners, we can easily get stuck in working on a person. And that's because we feel responsible. We want to help them. We feel like it's our job to help them with the problem that they come in with. And they also are hoping we're going to help them with the problems that they come in with. And so it sets it up for us to be the expert, and we tend to work on them and follow our protocols. But if we develop a relationship with our clients that bring them into the work, and we lead by following what's going on in their process so that we can let it unfold organically, that empowers them. It empowers them, and it takes the pressure off of us. The fire element is about Shen, so it's also about mindfulness and promoting self-awareness. And because the heart is associated with the tongue and communication, fire is also about communicating that spirit. And it's about unity through relationship. So I'm going to talk a lot more about communicating effectively and promoting self-awareness. The earth element comes in here because we want to use that guidance to help us bring the focus back to the body and body sensations, especially in this mind and body interface. And you'll see how we do that. You can explore tension and explore and establish inner resources through body awareness. Our earth abilities to empathize and to resonate come in very handy in this work. And as body workers, and just as people, the body is our terrain. It reflects all of our inner and outer activities. So using our hands, working with the body, and noticing body changes is the guide to the work. And just as metal grows within the earth and gives it structure and radiance, so also our emotions, our values, and beliefs are part of our inner egoic structure and our radiance. And so by acknowledging emotion, listening for values and beliefs, and helping those come out into the open, we can also help the person use their metal-given powers of discernment to decide what do they want to hold on to here? What should they let go of or transform? So it's a valuable part in the session. And water is that time in the session where people drop into that relaxation, they do some deep reflection, and what comes out, it bubbles up, the wisdom bubbles up. And we want to listen and support that, and that's the key to bringing in the resources in the powers of expansion. Okay. Why explore muscular tension? Because it really opens this inner door to the person's inner world, and they can understand themselves better. It brings up unconscious patterns to the light of awareness, and then they can decide what they want to modify. And the reason it does that is because chronic muscular tension patterns are almost always, not always, but almost always backed by the behaviors that call them into play. And those behaviors are backed by, so they're accompanied by some emotional component. It might be anxiety, it might be worry, it might be frustration or fear. But those emotions come in response to how we filter inner and outer activity through the lens of our values and our beliefs. In Chinese medicine, we talk about how the inner organs are manufactured by how emotions are manufactured by the inner organs in response to the environment. Our inner environment might be our thoughts, how we trigger ourselves with our own thinking. And of course, outer events that we filter, not only through values and beliefs, but our coping mechanisms and emotions are reflecting that. So there you get the big picture. And not only do the clients understand themselves better, but we understand the client's inner landscape better, and that helps assessment and treatment. So after working with her diaphragm tension slowly and mindfully, and I will describe that a little bit more in a moment, Jane became aware that she tenses, that tension comes in response to thoughts that she has about internal pressure to perform well and to meet expectations. And she also realized that if she emphasized her exhale, it helped her let go, both physically and mentally. So before she left that day, she decided that was going to be her focus for the week. She was going to work on her exhale and have it remind her to let go of her inner dialogues about her deadlines and decide what activity would really nourish her in the moment. And I also taught her how to release that diaphragm tension herself. And at the next session, she said that was very valuable, and her breathing had improved.
Hi, Kamala.
So, yes.
This is Wayne. I'm just breaking in for a second. It's going very well, but just wanted to let you know your earrings seem to be hitting the cord and creating a little static.
Oh, okay. Let me take them off. Thank you for saying that.
Okay.
Okay, hopefully that's better.
Okay, great.
Moving the earrings, getting the static. Okay.
Okay.
Ready?
Ready. Thank you.
Okay, back again. So in cases like this where we're exploring muscular tension, I will often tell a person, you know, our body is our faithful servant and it follows our inner commands. And the problem is that we usually don't realize what inner commands we're giving it. And the wisdom in the pattern of tension, the reframe of the wisdom in the pattern of tension is that the body is doing something to help us out. It's following the commands of some inner part of ourselves. And as we explore that, we find out which part that is. This is usually a very helpful reframe for people who are experiencing pain and discomfort because of this tension, maybe feeling victimized by their body. It gives them a sense of empowerment and choice. And so with Jane, the wisdom in that pattern of tension in her chest was that her body helped her mobilize to meet her inner expectations. And as we'll see later, it also helped her manage her relationships. Okay, now we're going to go to skill level. Probably one of our most important skills is the skill of listening. I learned Chinese medicine in large part because my teachers explained Chinese characters to me. And so here's one that I really like. It's the character for to listen. On the left, you have the radical for the ear. On the lower right is the radical for the heart, which implies undivided attention and listening wholeheartedly. The upper right radical is a symbol for 10 eyes, and so it implies 100% focus. So for all of us, it's using our senses, our eyes, our ears, being there wholeheartedly, and as body workers, using our hands to listen to and attend to the present moment. And that's probably the biggest gift that we can give our clients. I like that character so much that I made it the logo for Heart Mind Solutions. Okay. So if you get anything out of this webinar today, I hope you can get this, which is the interplay between listening and noticing with your heart, your hands, your eyes, and communicating effectively. So we want to train ourselves to listen and observe on many levels, not just the body and the energy level, but on the emotions, the values, listen for values, beliefs, and observe mental processes. And what do we do with what we observe? We make short, affirming, open-ended statements that name what you hear and notice. So this is, again, another integration with Hakomi, noticing and naming. And naming in this way that is not question-oriented, but statement-oriented. And you can make statements for anything you notice, and I have some examples here. I'll go through them for you. So I might say something like, your shoulders tighten when you say that. You know, I might be tracking that or noticing that because of my hands or because of what I notice with my eyes. And I make a short little statement about it. And then I pause and I see what happens, what the client does with that. Or I might say, this seems very important to you. And there I'm targeting a value that I'm hearing. Or I might say, you sound angry, or you sound sad, or you seem sad. And of course there I'm naming an emotional component that's surfacing. Or I might say something like, so a memory just came up. That is naming something going on in a mental process. She might be tightening her shoulders, saying something that's important to her, having some emotion, and then up comes a memory, and I name that. And so as you notice something and name it, it's open-ended. The person can consider it, and they will let you know what their own experience is. If it's really right on, they're going to just keep talking and tell you more. And if it's not quite right on, they'll tell you what's going on for them, and that keeps you on track, because you can let go of your own agendas that may be there, of what you're listening, and get a sense of where the person's really at, and name that. Oh, okay, so that's what it is. It's not really angry. It's more like frustrated or even sad, right? So that's how you would use that listening and keeping on track. We ask a lot of questions in our work, and the questions are important, especially in the beginning when we're doing our health history and at other times. But when you want to focus someone on their present experience and keep it going, you want to make these little statements, because in order to answer those questions, people have to go deeper in their present experience. So I tell students, whenever you feel like you want to ask a question, you've already noticed something that you could make a statement about. So practice making a little open-ended statement, wait and see what your client does, and follow up on that. And that's part of this partnership model, leading by following. Exploring tension. When you want to explore tension and find the wisdom pattern in it, it's very helpful to have an experimental attitude. Here's another Hakomi technique. An experimental attitude is one of suggestion, invitation, curiosity. Okay, so I want to invite the person to do an experiment. So I say to Jane, how about if we explore this tension by using a combination of some pressure points and your breathing, and I'll have you notice some of the qualities and we'll talk about that. And she goes, yeah, okay. And so then I describe the experiment in more detail. So I'm going to say, okay, when you exhale, I'm going to put a little pressure on your diaphragm in an easy way. And then when you inhale, I'm going to take it off. I'm going to move. When you exhale again, I'm going to press in. And I'm going to ask you to notice things like how the rest of your body responds to this, or any words that might come up. We'll do it slowly and see what happens. She says, okay. And then you do the experiment. And slowly and mindfully is the key. If you do something slowly and the person's mindful about it, they really get a sense of detail, and you get a sense of being able to see what's going on so that you can also name some things. And this is the key. And so when you're doing experiments, you can work with one place and notice how the rest of the body responds so that you can get a bigger sense of the process. So I might say to Jane, well, what happens when your diaphragm tenses? And she says, well, then my chest tightens and my shoulders go up to my ears. So you get the bigger picture of the pattern we're working with. And also you listen for associated feelings or thoughts that come up, and you can name them. one technique I did with her, and I do a lot, is that I might release an area. This is a Jin Shin Do technique, as we often work on one side of the body and then the other. And so it's a perfect time to have people compare what you've worked on to what's still like it was when you came in. So this idea of working on an area and let it release a little bit and then compare it to an area that's still tight gives a lot of information to the person about what they come in with and what it feels like when they let go. And this was, and was doing this that Jane realized that this tension was coming in response to inner thoughts she was having about what she had to do and expectations that put a lot of pressure on her. Another thing that you can say when you've explored some tension is that you could say, you know, if your diaphragm could talk to us, what would it say? Or if your shoulders, if these tight shoulders could talk to us, you know, what would they say? And then the answer comes from experience. It's often, if you stay with that experience long enough, the answer is there. Okay, what are skills that help and pitfalls to avoid? Your curiosity and the way that you can track your client's curiosity and inspire their curiosity. Notice what they're curious about. That is really a skill that helps. Your careful observation, watching how things change from moment to moment, this yang sheng, right? Observing with your hands, making short affirming statements that name what you notice. And when you get around to asking questions, you want to ask how, when, or what questions. These questions help keep a person in their experience. So it might sound like this. So let yourself notice when this muscle's tight, what other muscles chime in? Okay, that gives you a sense of the bigger picture. Or what qualities does this tension have? Is it tight? Is it dense? Is it stretched? Sometimes if you give little options like that, the person will go back in and explore and they'll tell you what it is for them. It gives them a little sense of what they're looking for. Or maybe a question like, how is the rest of your body responding to this touch? Or how is your diaphragm responding to this touch right now? Okay, so these questions help you stay in the experience. And when you stay in the experience long enough, the meaning is going to come out of that. And it's a different meaning than you will make in your head. The pitfalls. The pitfalls are we try and find meaning too quickly. We haven't stayed in the experience long enough, so the person doesn't really get it, or they haven't gone deep enough there. Or we might ask why questions. Why do you think this is important? Or why is this happening? And that is a question that takes a person in their head and out of their experience. And sometimes we ask those questions because we're too curious about the story, and we think that it's the story that's important, when really it's what's happening in the body and the changes in the moment that are your guide and that are most important. Okay. In the third session that we did, things changed a little bit. Jane came in, she said she was doing great, her breathing was better, it's a great time in her life, she loves her teaching, she got a great boyfriend, but she'd like to have more women friends in her life. And she also said that in the past week, she realized that a part of her doesn't want to fully inhale or exhale, because for her that means she lets people in and lets people go. Right? And once somebody's in her heart, it's very hard to let them go. And as she was talking, tears started to well up in her eyes. So now I felt like we moved into the fire realm. We're moving into the realm of relationships. We're moving into feelings. We're moving into emotions. I wanted to encourage her to stay with those feelings, to let them be a part of our study, to notice where they were in her body. And I started working with metal and fire points in her neck and her chest. So when you're working with feelings, when they come up, especially when they come up spontaneously like this, you want to encourage to make some space for them. And you can say things like, let's make some space for those tears to be here. Or, it's okay, be with those feelings and just let them speak to you for a minute. Or you might say, what kind of tears do these feel like? Are they tears of grief? Are they tears of joy? Are they tears of sadness? So in that same way, I gave a couple little words that kind of open the field of emotion up, and the person will see what it is for them and let you know. You don't have to know, they'll tell you. And after feelings release, it's often a time where insights are more available. And you want to look for this time when inner wisdom emerges. This is part of establishing an inner resource and a pattern of expansion. So after we worked with her chest for a while, I went down and did some points in her belly and back. I think I was working with the kidney shoe point in the back and CV66, those points like that in the front. And Jane said, you know, there's a part of me that's bubbly and most people see that, but there's also a part of me that's quiet and not many people know that part of me. So this is something she's telling me. It's part of the story. And so I want to be careful not to get stuck in the story and ask about this part of herself and how she knows that or anything like that. But what I want to do is I want to help her embody that story, embody the key phrase. There's a part of me that's quiet. People don't know that part. So this is weaving the mind back to the body and working with that interface. So I ask her to feel that quiet part in your body. Maybe take a moment to go inside and notice, where do you feel that quiet part of you? And she says, it's in my low abdomen, below my navel. And so as this was going on, I realized with the points and the content that this is a time where inner resource was there and I wanted to support it. So how do you help support and establish an inner resource? Embodying the phrase or the thought. Feel that quiet part of you in your belly. Ask what, when, or how, where, or how questions to keep her in her experience. So I could say something like, so just feel into that quietness and see if there's any other qualities that you notice. This is the same technique. When I explore tension on the physical level, I might say, feel this tightness in your diaphragm and notice what other muscles chime in. And here I say, feel the quietness. Feel into that quietness and notice, are there any other qualities? And she says, it's still, strong, and self-confident. It's a quiet strength. Okay. Then you want, again, so that was the meaning of it. She told me more about it. Now I want to weave it back to the body and make stronger links between the mind and the body and let her savor it. And so I use her imagery and say, so let yourself for a moment just go back and flow with that quiet river of strength in your belly. Let yourself really savor it. Let your mind and body feel what that feels like and sense the inner wisdom in it. Okay. So I feel like as practitioners, we often miss this opportunity to find the resource in a pattern of expansion because it usually comes at the end of a session after a person's relaxed. And a lot of times when a person's relaxed and feel better, they say, oh, I feel so good, I'm relaxed. We feel like, oh, our job's over, good job. And of course it is a good job that they feel better. But there's a missed opportunity often because when the mind and the body are calm, people are much more able to feel this inner guidance of intuition and spirit, to feel their heart-mind state. They may notice when they go inside, they may notice spaciousness, peace, and even a loving presence at the core of their being. So making this pathway to the inner realm more conscious really develops it as a resource that a person can always go back to in times of stress and illness. And it's also a way for us to find out and affirm to the client what the next step in healing for healing is for them. So the session becomes a creative meditation on the self in the moment. After you get the inner guidance, do you want to make it practical? She said, Jane said that she wanted to find other people that had those qualities of strength. And I said, well, how are you going to recognize those qualities in other people? And she said, it's a light that they have that shines in their eyes, and it's a quiet strength that they have that makes me feel calm. So then she decided she was going to look for friends with those qualities, and that she would remember to bring her awareness and her breath to her belly to feel that centeredness, to ground herself during her daily activities. So at the end of the session, you want to complete and integrate. Even if you haven't done any body-mind work and you've done a regular session, you might like to ask your clients, what seems most important to you about this session, and what would you like to remember? And let them notice it themselves. And And you could say, well, how could you implement a piece of that in your week, this coming week, or whatever is appropriate for that situation? And they'll tell you, and then you say, great, we can talk about it. Next time, I'll check in with you on it. So you're creating an ongoing link, and then you put it in your chart, and when the person comes in the next time, you ask them about it. And even if they say that, they say, oh God, I forgot about that, and it's, life is busy, yada, yada. You can say to them, if you want to, if it's still important, you check inside, see if it's still important, we can focus on that again. Or maybe there's something else on the front burner that you want to deal with today. And even if you go and work on another piece of work, you're probably going to find that the same patterns that want attention repeat themselves in different ways. And it's going to be easy for you to be able to connect sessions and work together for the person. Okay, let's summarize. You want to use the 5-phase principles to guide your work and the healing relationship. You want to listen with your whole being and effectively name what you notice. You want to explore tension using an experimental attitude to discover the mental pattern that keeps that tension in place. You want to make space for feelings and emotions. Listen for inner resources. Embody phrases, right? Embody the story and embody the inner wisdom that emerges. You want to complete and integrate. And that takes you around the 5-element cycle in the session. And you come back around to wood. You've got some new ideas, some new choices and options, and you can begin again in your next week. So beginning with wood and ending with wood. So I want to talk a little bit about when it's best, who's best to work with this kind of work, especially if you're starting out with your skill level. With everyone, you want to listen and practice your communication skills so that you expand your capacity to listen on multiple levels of experience and name it with statements. If you start with somebody that you know well, that makes it easy, and who expresses some interest in this work, tell them about the benefits and get their permission and work with them. You can work with people who come in and say that they know that their symptoms are stress-related. They're going to be more open to this kind of work. People with some sense of body awareness already and with some kind of self-awareness are probably going to be easier to work with in the beginning. And if people come in and they're feeling really overly emotional or very talkative or agitated, I usually help focus them on body awareness. So I will ask them, well, where do you feel this emotion in your body? Or what we're talking about right now, where do you feel that? How can we embody that? And I'll emphasize that and slowing the process down to help them get a sense of what's underneath it. I want to tell you just a minute about the benefits for us as practitioners that I feel comes from this work. When you increase your skills, you can expand the range of people that you can work with effectively, and that's going to affect your practice. It makes your job easier because you're teaching clients how to be mindful and be a part of their practice, and it takes the pressure off of you, takes some pressure off of you. You can learn to quickly sort through the storyline and get to the heart of the matter. You can increase your assessment and your treatment skills, make them more effective because you're increasing your depth of understanding with the clients. You're more aware of the roots of the pattern that's manifesting in the body, and so is the client. You can get more comfortable with feelings that are present and exploring them for deeper levels of the inner world. And you can help your clients discover what their inner self is indicating as the next step in their healing journey. Okay, getting to the end here, I want to talk about what could be next steps for you if you want to continue this work. One thing is that you can go to my website, and I'll give you the link, the address in the last slide. But I have an ebook there called Heart Mind Solutions, and it's a clinical guide that will teach you how to do these things that we've talked about in this webinar. Work with the 5 phases for the healing relationship, work on foundational skills to clarify goals, establish mindfulness, use experiments, improve your skills, establish resources, and how to work with emotional intelligence. So I hope that will be a great guide for you. I've got another couple ebooks up on my site that you'll see if you go there that you might be interested in. This one, Meridian Health Almanac, is a compilation of the research that was done to the classics by my mentor, Heiner Fruhoff, who himself is like Elizabeth Rochat. And it also talks about the meridians according to the system of the 12 earthly branches. It gives you lots of images and symbolisms that you can use in your work. It's also written for the general public, so you can reference it to your clients. And I put up a book about walking Qigong that you might like. It's got pictures and video clips, and you might be interested in how I integrated the walks with the 5 elements to create a symbolic dance that also helps tap us into resources. Okay, so future study with me. I'll be doing more webinars on this topic from the ebook, and hopefully some of that will be through AOBTA. I'm available for individual and group live classes or individual mentorship. So here you have my website, moonandlotus.com. You can sign up for my newsletter or blog, and you've got the link for the publications, and you can email me and tell me to put you on my list. Okay, so I want to end here and see if we have some time for questions. See what we can do about that.
Great, thanks, Kamala. We want to check in with Matthew to see what kinds of questions have been coming up through the presentation.
Yes, good morning. We have so far one question came in from a Mitchell, and her question, I think it's a her. I'm sorry if it's a man. How long are your sessions with clients?
You know, my sessions with clients are about an hour. I try and keep it to an hour. If I have a first session with a client, it's probably an hour and 15 minutes because I'm doing a lot of other kinds of assessment work. But these kind of places, once you get better at it, you can get more efficient with it, and sessions, and you can keep it within your time frame.
Do you have I would follow that question with kind of what's the shape? Is there kind of like 5 to 10 minutes talking, sitting upright, and then to the table, and then 35, 40 minutes on with points and hands-on work, and then 5 or 10 minutes to close? Or do you have a sense for how that time is allotted during your session?
You know, usually I'm talking with people for 10, maybe 15 minutes, because some of that assessment work I'm doing at that time. And I might ask them, you know, especially if they come in with an emotional thing, well, where do you feel that in your body? But then I will take them to the table, and we're on the table for the rest of the time. I start with point work, and depending on how that first part went, I may do more assessment in the beginning, and then we sit down and we do 15, you know, I will do points, well, we said 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes, work for half an hour, you know, with the points and the process, and then finish up in the last 10 minutes, 5, 10 minutes, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. Just opening it up to participants. Are there any other questions? You can type in the Q&A field there. Don't be shy.
Don't be shy.
It's quite okay. There's a lot of content here.
While we're waiting for questions, I just want to mention that we'd really like to hear from you if you have suggestions for topics that you'd like to be covered in these ongoing webinars. You can contact Matthew at communications@aobta.org. You can contact me at president@aobta.org, or you could contact Wayne, who's our managing director, at director@aobta.org. And we'd really like to have your feedback and your ideas.
Here's another question. Let's see. Oh, somebody's saying it's great and she just needs to digest before she can ask questions.
That's true. That's very, very, very insightful. Very insightful. You know, if you find, just to anyone who's here, if you digest a little bit, start to work with it and find that you have questions, go ahead and email me. And I'd be happy to answer some of those questions for you.
Another comment from Rosemarie. Thank you for your life work, blending meaningful and supportive healing art forms into a useful method. I don't have specific questions. I want to acknowledge your life's work and grateful to have the resources.
Thank you. Thanks very
And
much.
Gail asks, do you recommend or require a minimum number of sessions?
You know, I often recommend people come in the beginning, maybe 4 to 6 times. I don't require it, but I probably work towards that, and I find that after that amount of time, we're able to see what kind, do we want to continue? Do we want to go every week, every other week? Do we want to just touch base once a month? Like that.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, a follow on that one for me would be, do you sense that there's a shape that you ask them to set some sort of a goal that you're kind of looking for some benefit or result that would be palpable to them, and then you would know that the number of treatments needed to reach that goal has been satisfied as you kind of dialogue around that question?
Well, I think that comes out with the initial talking. I try and get clear with us, you know, what are we working on? What do you want to accomplish? What do you feel like are the issues there? Okay, let's work with that and see where we go. So I keep it open-ended. We both have a sense about it, and I work with that. And I also try and keep our work focused around that. The next session, I'm going to check in about that, you know, and see what we're doing. And then, you know, we might say, you know, let's do a few sessions and we'll reevaluate, see where we're at, what we want to do next.
Mm-hmm. Great. Susan Pataki chimed in with fantastic. Thank you. Thank you, Kamala.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any other questions out there? Oh, here is another one. Do you have a personal practice you have to help you stay grounded during your sessions?
I think that my Qigong practice is what I use to stay grounded during my sessions. And I also have the feeling, so energetically, when you start to work with people and you focus them on their inner experience, the energy is moving this way. Okay, so it's moving away from you and into their experience, less of it, you know, coming up. And so that grounds me. It also grounds me to come back to the body. If I get too lost in thought, it's like, what's going on with my hands? Have I lost track of the body? Sometimes that happens, especially in the beginning. You get caught in what's going on here and you've lost your points or what's going on in the body. So grounding back into the body, creating space, just working quietly for a while until I feel the flow comes back in. All those things can help.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Do you also use this with acupuncture patients?
Yes, I do. In fact, nowadays I usually do some combination of acupuncture. I do a lot of acupuncture with people, and if we're going to do body-mind work, I really like the hands-on part. So I will probably put in some needles and do some acupressure work in a specific area, and we focus. But I have done it also where I put the needles in and I just talk people through a little bit, and I don't have my hands on, but I really like the hands-on piece. I think it adds a great dimension for us and for the person that we're working on.
Great. Another question followed from A. Mitchell, and it is a he. So thank you for that. If you're interested, it's a man. Okay. His question is, if one is interested in your approach but doesn't have your skill level,
yeah,
what is your suggestion for starting to incorporate this method into the practice?
Listen and make those statements. Notice just those observation skills. Increase your levels of observation and work with people. Just start out, you know, when you do this work, if it's a change from what you've really been doing with people and you want to change your practice a little bit, you're going to need to educate people about that. But start with people who are easy, or start with colleagues. With everybody, try this listening and naming approach, and you'll see how fast things start to move. And ask people, where do they feel it in their body? Okay, where do they feel it in their body? And you can talk to people about the benefits of it. People want to do it if there's some benefit. And they feel it's a benefit to know what goes on underneath so that they can evaluate if there's something they can do to help their situation. They're interested in that. So that's what I would recommend. Listen and try and listen and name, and try and listen for multiple levels of experience, and work with people that maybe you're not paying, start out working with people you're not paying. And then when you do start out, you're going to want to tell people about that this is an option that they could do with you for, maybe in one session or a part of a session. You don't have to do all of your sessions like that. Little pieces go a long way sometimes.
Mm-hmm. And I would assume that reading your ebook is probably a really good place to
read the ebook. Yeah, get the ebook and read it. There's going to be a lot you'll understand better just by reading through that. Try some of the things in there. You can talk to me about it. Listen for future webinars. It's a process. It's a process, and then you just slowly kind of work on your skill levels, and you come up with some place where you get stuck. You can, consult or read again. Try it with someone else.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
We're coming up on the last minute here. There's a testimonial from your student, Becky Smith.
Oh.
It says you've been her teacher, mentor, and friend since 1986. She's a JSD teacher and Hakomi practitioner, and just really grateful for your sharing.
Oh, thank you, Becky. I have to give a testimonial for Becky. Becky and I have been teaching and growing together for a long time, and I really appreciate her work. Becky is a great therapist, and we're both in this kind of blend Hakomi and classical Chinese medicine style. So
great.
Yeah, thanks, Beck.
And Valerie Coleman Polanski says she enjoyed hearing about the partnership approach and really appreciates the seminar.
Good. Great.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
Right. So I think at this point, given our time, we ought to put up that final poll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And have our participants give us our grades. And
yeah, we need our grades.
And thanks so much, Kamala. This was really great.
You're welcome. Thanks again, Deborah. I'm so glad you're the president now, and it's just been fun to work here and connect a little bit again.
Yes.
Really great.
Yeah, very good.
And Wayne, thank you. Matthew, thank you. Thanks to everybody. This was a really nice teamwork approach.
Takes a team. I think we have the results to the poll. Do you want to read those out?
Well, it says, was this an enjoyable experience? We have 100% yes.
Yay.
Is this a worthwhile learning experience? 100% yes. Will you attend another AOBTA Lunch and Learn webinar? And 100% yes. I'd say pretty successful.
Great. A good first start.
Yes.
Yay.
Yay.
And thanks everybody for coming, and especially thanks to Wayne for orchestrating this whole thing and figuring out how to do it.
Yeah, thank you, Wayne.
As we said, we would love to, hear your feedback about the technical aspect and things that we could do better. But again, for coming, and we hope to see you next month.
Please send us emails with
goodbye to everyone.
Okay.
Until next time.
Bye-bye.